So I want to say a word about my slides in this chapter. Usually, I think it probably come across all my lectures, but especially in this lecture, the slides with red fonts are very important. Those slides carry very important messages. I expected you to completely understand those slides. And for the busy slides is more information, but my requirement for your understanding is less than those super important slides. So those busy slides just provide information because I know a portion of the small portion of the students in this class they do not have textbooks. So I hope them through the reading of the slides they get to know more about the topic. So what happens when waste is dumped? The Smoky Mountain in Philippines. This is a very large area of a site for open dumps. So the open dumps means unregulated waste disposal areas, and that is very harmful for the people living around there. And those open dumps generates huge amount of methane and carbon dioxide and release other air pollutants like dioxins that's more toxic. Okay, that's a carcinogen. And those sites also generate the toxic fluid. It's called the plumes. Okay, so that is resulted from the mixing of the rainwater or groundwater with the trash, and they undergo the chemical reactions. So the heavy metals, ammonium, and dioxins could be released from the plume, and there's a bunch of germs are generated by those open dumps. And that causes air pollution and water pollution. So looking back, in the history, this is a picture of United States government dump hazardous and radioactive waste in the ocean. So needless to say, those harmful chemicals can be taken by the ocean creatures. They can be accumulated and pass to the next trophic level with much higher concentration. We did an exercise on this. And it is a very unfair situation. Okay, so the developed countries such as United States, they try to dump the trash on other country or other area of the country. And so there's this large body of 121 countries. They pass an agreement, international agreement called the Basel Convention. That is to restrict transboundary movement of household waste and hazardous waste from more developed to less developed country. And even though that international agreement was passed, many hazardous materials still shipped to the developing countries. This is an example. The North Carolina low-income community protested to make their neighborhood a landfill site for PCB. So where we dump the trash becomes a social justice issue. And according to the statistics, most of the landfills are in the neighborhood of African Americans and low-income communities. And that is very sad, and that is not fair. So we're going to talk about the environmental justice in the later chapters. So what methods we use to manage waste? The first one is isolation. That means we isolate the trash from us. So we transport them to another place, either buried on the surface of the land or buried deep underneath. And we sometimes construct containment buildings with radioactive materials, so we make sure they are not leaking. The second method is burning, incineration. And the third one is conversion. Conversion is really interesting. That means we make beauty out of ashes. We convert those waste to something else we can use. So less than 12% of the waste go to the incinerators. We're going to quickly take a look at the incinerator later. And the majority of the trash is disposed through isolation. And the most popular method of isolation is sanitary landfill. And this is a picture how we bury the trash, right? We dig this big hole and we put them and seal them. The problem is the gas keep producing a huge amount of methane and other greenhouse gases produced because the trash interact with each other. That's why we have to put this lining underneath to prevent the pollutants escaping from the landfill and going to the groundwater. And we try to use the waste gas produced by the landfill. Okay, we burn it, we use it to produce electricity. I want you to watch this YouTube video. I believe it's about like 5 minutes. And it's tremendously helpful for you to understand the landfill process. Please watch it. The second isolation method I'll quickly mention is geological disposal. We did the Annenberg assignment, right, in last week, and how we dispose carbon dioxide. We inject them deep under the ground, but the technology is still developing, and we want to make sure there's no leaking. Also, we dig tunnels and we bury the radioactive material deep underneath, and we call those structures containment buildings. The challenge of isolation will be the leaching of the pollutants to the groundwater system and seeping the soil. And the air pollution, right? The landfill produce a lot of methane and carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. And the leaking, when we bury things deep underground, the leaking will be a huge problem, and we have those accidents. Now, a word about incineration. That means high temperature combustion. So when we burn the trash, the good thing is to greatly reduce their volume. But the downside is we have to use tremendous amount of energy. That's why sometimes we use the gas generated from the burning, and we inject the gas back to the burning process. Or we use the semi-waste, we add the semi-waste back to the burning process just to enhance the efficiency. Conversion is a waste-to-energy facilities. And in the city planning, I'm going to give you more material and see how smart some communities or even countries, they are powered by those waste gas from the landfill. And we can compost the wasted food, and it is really sad. We, in this country, throw away more food than we produce. So when we do the composting, we can utilize some of the energy, because after it's fermented, it's composted, we can use the methane as a burning gas. And remediation means convert hazardous waste to less hazardous substances. That means we use plants or microbial organisms to convert the waste to something that can be taken up by the plants or the microbes, so they do not have to stay in the water or the soil in the environment. And we can do this in a sustainable way. This is a beautiful stadium we constructed on the landfill site. We have parks, and we have apartments built on the landfill. And we can also use the landfill for solar farm. So we have a bunch of methods to reclaim the sites of landfill. But the first thing is to make sure it is safe. Okay, that those sites are safe and that the gases were effectively and safely redirected and handled. Otherwise, it causes the explosion. So this is the second part.